And I came down and I was broke. I mean, really. Andre was 44. And I came in and went up to the Madison shop. And Walter George was the first person that I approached. And Walter could be kind of snippy. So at any rate, I says, you know, you guys got him. I've been working since I was 13 in a clothing store at home and then in college. And you think he needs somebody here? No, we don't need anyone like that. So I go down kind of dejected. And Jack Golden was working here at the time. You remember Mr. Golden?
I do.
At any rate, he says, what's happening, young man? You remember how you used to kind of be. And I told him the story. He said, come over here. Come over here. He grabbed me and he went and got Andre. And Andre was 44 at the time. And he says, you need to speak to this young man. He's got a lot to say. Andre said, well, okay. So we went up there, and I mean, it was almost 4 hours. I'm telling you, boy, he was like, he grilled me. I mean, it was like, I didn't know what to think of it over. But at any rate, you know, I don't think I ever went into any job that I wasn't totally wide open, every possible thing. So the clearness with which my first encounter with Jack and Walter for that part, and then Andre was spectacular. I mean, it was very special type of a thing, and it was something where I didn't have to worry. I was totally honest about it, and I think that's the way I tried to behave. Honesty throughout the whole deal, integrity. Those are all words that I think have kind of guided me through my life, and I got that from them. I mean, they were like big brothers to me, you know. And then there was Morris and Elkin. So another interesting thing. So I think if you want my number one, and I don't know whether to put that on the number one figure or on whatever,
They don't have to be ranked.
I started, and the first day that I started was the first day that James Connors started. We started at the same time. And Mr. Morris put me and James in the second floor stockroom for 2 weeks. I mean, that was how, that was, you know, and we had to revamp the entire stockroom and make it look pretty and make it functional. And he would come up there and check on us. And he was a kind man too, but he was kind of the merchant, you know, and he didn't play around. I mean, he was a great guy though. I never forget that relationship. And then Elkin was also, you know, he was more the manager type of the guy and, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, and then David was a young guy, was kind of wild and crazy at that time. So, you know, I don't know how far they are apart in age, like 2, 3 years, or
2 years, yeah.
2 years it is. So I had a really fun time in the very beginning. But I think honesty
old were you
and
at the time?
integrity. I was 21.
Yeah.
So I got that job, and you know, I mean, it's funny if you ever listen to James talk about our relationship. I mean, I love James and his brother. They're identical twins. At any rate, he always tells everybody. He says, you know, when Tom and I started, he says we went up on the lunch break. We were in the stock room, and it was so bad I didn't have hardly any clothing at all. I'd wear the same thing almost every day. And I had a pair of shoes, and one of them had a hole in it the size of a quarter. So I crossed my legs while we were up there eating lunch, and James says, what the equivalent in 1970 of, dude, man, what on earth is this? And I said, James, I said, it's nothing. I said, it gives me a little air down there and everything, you know. He busted out laughing, and he calls me rag dog. Rag dog. That's, I don't know, that just came from his mind, not from mine. So I'm probably rag dog second, you know. And at any rate, he was just a wonderful person, and Tommy Landry also. And, you know, so I started working in the furnishings department. And there was Donald Johnson, Myrtle Norris, Henry Steinmetz, the little guy, Eddie, I can't remember his last name, really little guy. Charles Marshall was there at the time, and you know, that was kind of the place. I couldn't sell anything but socks and underwear and maybe shirts and ties, and you know, and then the day that it really the wonderful time was when we were able to, they started buying leisure suits. That was my baby. Louis Roth leisure suits, you know, for 250. That was the biggest ticket. And imagine that, and Kiana shirts let me pay my grocery bill. And at the time, you know, Elkin primarily, but Morris too, they would come down, and we got paid every Friday, and it was cash. It rolled up in a little thing around it. and it was cash. And I mean, you know, so we got paid our whatever our draw in cash every Friday. And I lived up in the French Quarter, and I would go over to Rampart Street. There was a grocery store over there. Name of it right offhand, but I will. And I'd go in and I'd buy 5 pounds of hamburger meat and 5 potatoes, and that's what I ate every night when I got home. You know, I'd make me hamburgers, 5 pounds, pound a piece, have a big old baked potato, and that's what I ate. So it was kind of an interesting time back in the early time frame, you know.
What brought you to New Orleans?
Well, I knew about this. I mean, I was going to be in the clothing business no matter what. I mean, I started when I was 13, and I'm from Picayune. Had a Lebanese family that owned a store there for second generation, and I used to go in and work starting at 13, and I would run the shoe stock for the guy after school. And I played sports, and he liked having sports people in there because it brought other customers in and stuff. And I'd go out there, and then I'd run the shoe stock, and I'd break all the boxes the shoes came in down, and I'd put them in the back of an old El Camino and go to the dump. That was my job, is taking them and going to the dump. Then I graduated after that, and his father, Mr. Lee Salome, Elias Lee Salome, they had a little loan business on the side. And they would lend $10 to somebody, and then next week you had to pay them $15 is what it was. Well, the guy who owned the store, Marion Lee Salome, he hated that business because it never ended, you know. But a lot of these people didn't have anybody to do it. So my job was to drive Mr. Lee around. He gave me a receipt book and a snub nose 38, and he would take me to this. All right, go in there in that bar and see Ed Black. He owes me this and that. And I'd go in with a receipt book, put the pistol on the thing. If my mother had known that I was doing that at 13,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, she would put, you know, things happened in different ways back in those days. So, I mean, I never told her, but it was my first education in credit. I mean, a very, very good one, too, you know, and unbelievable comments and times that we had. So, long story short, then I went away to school at Southern Miss. I worked for Fine Brothers Madison Company there, which was a fine store, and you know, then they had a store a satellite store that was out by the campus, and I worked there until I got finished. And then you know, I knew kind of everybody that worked for companies like that all knew of Rubenstein's. They all knew about Rubenstein Brothers. So I just came down and went upstairs, and then found Jack, and then found your daddy, and the rest is history. So.
What, I mean, that's amazing. Why were you so intrigued by retail?
I don't know. It's just it's what I had done ever since my first job all the way on, and I enjoy people.
Yeah.
And I enjoy talking to people, dealing with people, trying to do the right thing, you know. And it's not always perfect,
Right.
but you know, that's kind of, I think, the thing that really I enjoy. Man, I liked fashion. You know, I liked looking good, you know, all of that.
And so, from out in Picayune and at Southern, do you remember what the reputation was? What did you hear about Rubenstein?
Oh, it was the best store in the South, maybe even more. I mean, it had credibility that nobody had. And that went on all through the time that I worked there, all the way up till today. I mean, Rubenstein Brothers at the time always had the iconic reputation amongst other retailers. So, you know, people in Jackson, Mississippi knew about him. I mean, Steve Scott, he knows about him. Everybody knows about him. The old guy that passed away recently, who had a fabulous old store up there, did too. I can't remember his name, but everybody everywhere. Hattiesburg knew about it. Fine Brothers knew about it, and you know, John White, who's also a retailer up in Hattiesburg, a wonderful friend of mine. You know, and he kind of started that way. He worked for a guy in Hattiesburg, and then he ended up buying his business out, and he's still in business to this day. So, you know, I think that reputation is something. It was a quality reputation, a fashion reputation, a straight shooter reputation, one that always paid their bills. Vendors love you, and always have, and it's for that simple reason. We're going to pay. That's it. You know, you don't see the people that I deal with now sometimes. I mean, it's challenging for sure, and never had to worry about that with Rubenstein's.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think, so you were here when Elkin and Morris were here, and you were here as Andre and David took over.
Yeah.
What do you see as things that are continuum from one generation to the next, and what do you see as distinctions and differences?
You know, it's a hard question to answer because in their time they were very special and very knowledgeable. Mr. Morris was a fantastic merchant. David is too, and so I think that they're very similar in regard to that. Maybe a little difference in personality. I didn't know Morris when he was young, and it's funny to see Andre and Elkin the same way, almost identical personalities. So how it happened? That David came more like, or was more like the uncle, and Andre was more like his daddy. I don't know, but it happened. And I think what happened was, you know, David always had a strong desire to have the best, the best. I think the difference was that was a very important thing to happen at that time is by going out and looking for the best Italian stuff, Italian merchandise, expensive merchandise. I think that really helped enhance the image of the company. Certainly within the industry, that's for sure. I mean, I know back when, I don't know if you remember, but we used to have a publication, Daily News Record, DNR, and that old guy there that was the editor, and he loved David. And anytime he needed something, he'd call David. David give him a little scoop or a little bit of a story. Well, that helped too, you know. And Herb Allweiss, he was a great guy, really nice guy. At any rate, he would give him some little information about what he saw about fashion, and honestly, that really grew out everywhere. So I think, you know, the transition of those two was very smooth. I mean, for us, we didn't hardly even recognize it or realize it, you know. It seemed that they all worked together. I'm sure they yelled at each other in these rooms, you know, that's the way it goes. But, you know, it was kind of fun, and for me, it was, they were very sweet people to me too, Morris and Elkin were. And you know, they knew that, you know, I'm just there to work. And I think they all realized that I was straightforward and honest. And they didn't have to worry about me because it's very difficult, you know, all through my time frame there. That was one of the difficult parts of my job, was trying to make sure that I chose the right people. I trained them so that they could be successful if they were able to, and that they were honest. And that didn't always happen. You know, when we opened the plaza, we had, you know, it was tough. I'm telling you, finding a workforce that you could, you know, and things changed from James and Mike and Ozzy's time frame. They changed. People didn't behave the way old folks behaved. You know, they, in some cases, they wanted something for nothing. In other cases, they wanted to take advantage. And you don't know why all that is. It's just that, you know, maybe it's family life, maybe it's the way that it works, but it was hard, you know, for many of those years. But we found enough people. I mean, one of the people out at Plaza that I found was Roland Belson. Now, you know, Roland in Friday afternoon and Saturday would sell more than somebody I had working 5 days a week. I know you spoke to him already. Well, you know what I'm talking about. He's a, you know, appeals court judge, but he's a seller. I mean, that guy, he's got a tongue of gold. He really does. We've become friends. You know, we have the same birthday also.
That's nice.
So we get together every now and then and go get something to eat, lunch or something on our birthday. But in Roland's case, I didn't have a choice. I mean, because of the difficulty in finding good people, I had to go pick him up. His wife, and they had 2 daughters, young daughters. His wife worked. She had to have the car. Roland was in school at UNO. And I'd have to go over to the apartment that he lived in over by UNO and pick him up on the way to work. So I said, now, you're going to have to work my schedule, you know, on Friday and Saturday. That's all right. It's okay. Arranged his classes there. I'd pick him up at the morning. I'd drop him off at 9:30, a quarter to 10. And I'm telling you, I mean, he was the best. He was the best seller that we had there. So, and we became friends forever, really. And you know, it took all kinds of ways to try to, you know, make success. But when we opened that store, it was Tommy Landry and me and James. and I had a little car that would make it out to New Orleans East and back. So I'd take them, and then I remember the day before we opened, we ended up leaving at 2:30 in the morning after stocking, and I had to go take Tommy uptown to his house, and then James to his house, and then, it's kind of all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of, doing as part of it. And I think that's another thing is that, you hate to have people work for you. You got to constantly push and stroke and thing. And I was a person that didn't do that. I always tried to go the extra mile and work whatever I had to get the job done. So, well, that's it.
What I didn't do was ask you to introduce yourself, your name and how you're connected to the store, and I want to be sure and get that on tape.
Okay. Well, my name is Tom Garner, and I started when I was 21 with Rubenstein Brothers. And
What year was that?
that was in 1974. And I basically worked through there till 1994. And so that's kind of that.
And what role did you?
Well, my first job was selling furnishings in the first floor. Second job was,
Sorry, and for those who don't know clothing, what does furnishings mean?
well, it's socks and underwear, T-shirts, it's neckwear, dress shirts, some sports shirts, and then, of course, leisure suits.
Of course.
And we were able to sell, Mr. Morris had a corner right when you come in the St. Charles Street door, that corner where there's a mirror today there, he had these little leather coats back there. And he found them somewhere up in New York, and they were like, I think they cost, I shouldn't even say that, they were $120. I bet I sold 1,000 of those black, heavy leather coats back there. So those are the things that I could sell. Then later I graduated to the Madison shop and started, I had good customers down there, but it was never, I had good clothing customers upstairs. So I had people like George Solomon, Teddy Solomon, his daddy, that kind of customer. And Roland became one of my best customers before he became a judge and once he became an attorney. He was a personal injury lawyer, did really well. And he would come and he would buy and everything. So we had that relationship as well. David Mintz was a customer. So anyway, those were kind of all the things that we would do. And, when we would start our sale back in those days, each of us that worked in there, it was me, Mark Rodriguez, Kim Herring, Gil Hines, Steve Turner, a variety of us. The first day of the sale, we would all have we gauged our success by the number of rolling racks full of suits we had to ring up on the first day. You get to 3, you're doing really well. You get to 2, you can pay your rent and go buy some groceries, that kind of stuff. So, we had Yves Saint Laurent, we had Tiger of Sweden, we had those kind of lines that were really good. And I think that Rubenstein's was one of the first Zegna customers in the United States. Mr. Sid in Boston and Rubenstein's, I think, were the first 2 customers that ever bought Zegna.
So you also became a store manager.
After that, after I went through the sales, I decided, okay, so I go out there and then I started working at Plaza. And we had really good business there for a long time. And then the area kind of changed, and then it became difficult there. So I worked there as the manager of that store, and then I opened the next store, the Lakeside store. And that was, I was looking at, I think that was October 15th of 1980 is when the Lakeside store opened. And Donald Johnson then became the manager of the Plaza store, and I moved to the Lakeside store, and I was the manager of that store for quite a while. And it was just like I was just telling you, so we moved in there in 1980 into the new store, and it was wild. We did great business out there. I mean, great business. And I was not married when I took the job going out there, and then, so that was in October. February 28th, I got married to Daisy. And so, and on December 24th, we had our first child, Gabrielle. I mean, we got busy with it there doing that. And then you know, so David comes out and helps me at the store because I mean, how am I going to tell my wife? My wife is from Ecuador. I mean, she's Hispanic and got fiery temperature, you know, temper. You, what do you mean you're not going to come out here with me? I'm like, okay, okay, it's gonna be all right. I'll be there. Don't worry. So then 2 years later, we had our son Paul, and the same exact thing happened. And and uh, and it's been I think that my family and really David and Andre and Kenny and Mark and then you and Robbie and Nikki, I think you kind of guys were my family. I didn't know anything about any of this, and you know it was just a loving relationship. I felt like, and you know you can tell, you know, when somebody respects you, and they always did. They were always wonderfully respectful of everybody. And, you know, David, Andre, they all ask about every family member I've got. What are they doing? Even today. So, you know, very important.
So you had to hire all these salesmen at Plaza and then at Lakeside,
And then later downtown.
and then
And
later downtown. where
all
you
three
also
stores.
became- Yeah.
And included is All American Jeans in that as well. So in the process of me leaving, okay, we hired Harry Seated to be the manager of the store at Lakeside. Wonderful hire, great guy, and Abe Rubenstein. Abe was the best, and so those two guys, I felt comfortable that we could, you know, they were going to do the right job. And so I came downtown because they needed, you know, a GM here. It was before Kenny and Mark came on board, and you know they were off doing their thing. I think at Neiman's or whatever it was that they were, you know, doing at that time. And so you know, I mean, I knew all the people at All American Jeans. I mean, when Paul was here and uh, Franz Ziblich, Lawrence Pugh, Leo Ozenthal, all of those guys were the best guys in there. Eddie Perriott, all of them were the best. And anyway, long story short, they kind of all moved on. And then Michelle Sigel came into the Rubenstein buying staff. She was the buyer for Paul over there. So all that changed, and Mary Beth Golden was the manager over there. So I was above Mary Beth, and then you know, but she did most of the managing of the stores. I had enough my hands full with all these people here, and then at the other two stores. So, long story short, we decided Mary Beth needed to come and be the manager of the first floor. So we brought her over here, and I had to find somebody else. Tanya Morrow comes up, and let me tell you, that girl is fireball and wonderful. She is very retail intelligent, very smart, and you know, it's but you know, I was so the first day she went to work, she was working at the at the Carrollton and St. Charles store, and the first day she went to work, she went in, and right behind her came some thieves that were armed, put a gun in her between her eyes, first day, and told her, "Give me the money, or we're going to kill you." So I'm at work here, and it was like I think 9 in the morning. I get a call, and she's rattled, she's shaking. So I jumped in the car. I go up there, and I mean she was literally shaking. And I think I yelled something at David on the way out of the door to go up there and be with her, and for her to be able to recover from that and thrive and now I mean she's gone through the ranks. She went over to ran the little gift store over here at the Marriott. Then she worked for Trump down at Doral, and then now she's working for Grayson Clothiers and has a big job. She had a big job with Trump. Eric Trump was basically her report to, and she's done really well. She's done well. And I stay in touch with her fairly regularly. You know, things a little different with with this job she's got now because she was head of retail for all of Trump resorts.
Oof,
You know, it was a big job.
that is a big job.
You know, and globally. So, you know, she's got the goods, and she did a wonderful job for us for all of that time frame. And then we kind of, you know, some of the people that we had working in New Orleans, Kim went to work for Alexander Julian. Then he went to Hugo Boss, and then Kim ended up as the sportswear designer for Zegna in New Jersey and in New York. And I know it's coming down.
It is coming down.
Yeah,
I might, sorry, it's not bad, I might reach out, I got Steve Allen coming in at 1. I
No
might
problem.
reach out to him and see if he wants to move to tomorrow, because
it's supposed to get
it's
worse.
getting worse.
Yeah,
exactly,
well, we're
so-
closing today. You know, all the schools are closed in the afternoon.
Okay.
In fact, they're probably getting them out now. So,
Yeah.
you want to tell him?
Give me just a
Yeah,
minute to text
sure,
him,
go
just
ahead.
in case he's like, I do not wanna come.
No, I don't blame him.
Which I would not blame him for.
I got to run around in this too some today.
Yeah,
I don't,
so I'll try to keep it, tight, so you don't end up finding yourself,
it looks like I'm gonna not have an opportunity to avoid being wet. And my umbrella's in the car, of course.
of course. Would you like to reschedule to tomorrow? Given the weather. Please continue.
Mhm.
So Kim's in
Kim's
New
at
York,
Zegna.
right?
Kim's at Zegna, and you know they were looking for somebody to be the GM of the New York store primarily. And he says, "Man, you need to call him." So they did. Richard Cohen called me, and that's basically my job was to be the GM of the retail division. They had somebody running the wholesale division, and that was not my experience. My experience was retail. So that this job and this relationship prepared me to work for a global company that and basically to go out and open stores. I mean, you know, I opened the store in Boston. I opened the store in Chicago. I opened another store in Las Vegas on Rodeo. I mean, in Las Vegas. Another one on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, and around, and had to staff all of them. So that's kind of what I did. Everything that I've ever done is kind of done that. So
So a lot of people I've talked to have talked about, on both sides, whether they were selling or buying, have talked about the particular ethos here and learning to be a salesman and what it means, what it has meant to them in a larger sense, the things they learned here about selling or the things that they experienced here when they came
right,
in.
right.
I imagine as GM, some of that was developed by you,
Oh,
or
yeah.
at least observed. So can you talk a little bit about what is it you try to teach
Well,
people?
David, when he was young, and I decided when he started promoting me a little bit, we decided that people weren't trained the way we wanted them to do it. So we sat down and we worked through a process of training salespeople. The good ones would take it and enhance it. The bad ones would end up going out the door. Some people you just cannot teach how to be personable and to sell. I mean, over the years, I remember so many people that Dave and I, that's all we talked about was the evaluation of the staff and how they were doing. And, and David was very aggressive about it, and which is really he needed to be. Because we had some people that, you make a mistake when you hire them. They're great, they look great, but they talk too much. They don't understand that, it's time to get over here to the register and ring this up and move on to the next person. So, we'd have to go through all of that and do all of that. So the training program was, I was charged with that, with dealing with that. And I was also charged because it was the time where Jack Cardarella and Bob Bourgeois and all them old guys who didn't want anybody telling them how to do anything, including David, and were working, and we're all very successful. So I had to work through that, and when I was young, I guess I was more like David than I would be like Andre during those days. I mean, we're trying to do this. I mean, this is what the owners want to do. My job was to try to get this done, and we're going to do it. So I think that kind of developed a reputation that that a lot of people didn't like, especially the old guard, because they didn't want to change. So over time, when they retired and moved on and stuff, you have to weigh how you have to choose your battles dealing with somebody. You don't want to piss anybody off because they're your bread and butter. And sometimes it wasn't as fast as David wanted it to be. I had to talk to him about that. And you have to look at, we got to do this deliberately, do this in a way that we don't lose everybody and that we don't get a bad reputation around town. Because at the time, Saks then started coming in, started trying to steal our salespeople. And, you got to be careful about how direct you are sometimes with the people that you work with.
What were the principles you were trying to get across to people?
Well, primarily the structure, a plan. You had to have a plan. And you had to know exactly what was, you can't, we didn't want to put words in people's mouths, but we had to understand that, okay, you've got to focus on, okay, let's say a guy comes in and you want to try it, he wants to be interested in a suit. Okay, first thing you got to do is you got to focus on the type of merchandise that he wants. Does he want shirts? Does he want suit? Second thing is the model that he wants. But you got to go through those steps, and you have to have a plan of those steps, and then you have to make the fit aspect of it, and you got to make sure that you're not trying to put something in somebody, because the last thing you want is something that can't be tailored the way you've promised it. And there were a lot of bad problems with salespeople that would overpromise things. Oh, don't worry about it, it'll all fix. So training them about all of that aspect. Okay, type of merchandise, model, fit, and then the accessories that go along with it. It was a simple concept.
Is this the 7 unknowns?
Yes, look at you. Yeah, they all probably, anybody, Roland knew them, he knew them and all. So we went through that so many times, and the 7 unknowns, wow. Does David even remember all that? I'm sure he does, huh? Yeah, it was his baby. It was okay. I'm the one that had to put that in place, It was fun. It was really fun. But it was the first time anybody had ever put structure to the process,
Why do you think it matters?
Type, size, price, color, fabric, model, fit.
Say that one more time.
Type, size, price, color, fabric, model, fit.
Bingo. Well done.
That is anchored into my brain,
Did it end up being useful when you left Rubenstein's?
Oh, of course. Now, you can't, natural talent of a person who is a seller, you can't replace, and when you get lucky to find a person that's in a position that does that right, knows how to do that, all you're doing is enhancing a little bit. So yeah, absolutely it did. So.
Do you think that those principles, the principles you tried to teach the salesman in order to make a sale, is there anything about that that's applicable outside of selling? Do you think it was useful beyond that?
The answer to that is, yeah, I think so. I think the idea, once I had to go, Bill Walker, was a big operation out of Dallas for a while. They had about 800 salespeople, and asked me to come over there and make to have a sales conference. And that was the whole thing. The whole thing is you go to work and you wait, this happens, that happens. You end up having no structure whatsoever, and you don't get anything accomplished. That's, I think, the thing that, like for me even today, I sit in the morning and I do just like what you're saying. I got this, and that is why. I didn't have that before I came here, before we worked for years to try to accomplish that. My daughter, now that's basically what she does. She teaches, except she uses technology to do all of that. And it's amazing to see how far that's taken her. So the answer is yeah, it absolutely gives you structure and ability to plan properly. So I think that's really what it boiled down to.
We talk about sales as if it's one thing.
Mm.
What do you think, what would you describe as the difference between the sales approach here and, let's say, an unnamed store?
Yeah.
Like if you got a salesman if a salesman came to get hired here from an unnamed store and you thought, and you can imagine what store that is,
Right.
And you thought, I'm gonna have to reteach you everything, right? You might have been successful there, but what's the difference in approach between the sales?
Well, I never thought of it that way. I understand what you're saying and asking me, but I never thought of it that way. I always knew it was my job to make sure that they understood our approach. And now, looking at it from my perspective, retail And this job has helped me so much in my wholesale business at Torino Leather that I can't, it's immeasurable. You know, having been on retail is so much more important to be in wholesale than the other way around.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, well, okay, so, you know, the first thing is that you understand how the buyer thinks, period. A retail mentality is different than a wholesale mentality. When I started with Torino Leather, I was with Bill Mimless, you know, he was self-centered, and do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do customer, that and the other. You gotta make it work out. You got to try to find common ground with any customer in any way. It's like making a friend. You know, you can't make a friend if the person doesn't trust you. You know, first thing in all relationships is trust. Like that with Daisy and I, you know, 42 years now we've been trusting each other, thank goodness for that. I'm sure it's the same for you. That's really what it boils down. So if a person comes in, you do the best job you can to try to evaluate where they are, for sure, but it's trying to take their positive points and enhance upon it, and then move it forward. And that's where we did a good job.
Yeah.
You know, and we always did a good job that way. So it's the way when Mr. Morris put me and James in the stockroom, I understood. You know, I knew where everything was in that stockroom in the furnishings department. So I had no problem taking a little trip up the steps and going in there and getting something if I needed a tie. You know that, and Miss Gertrude, who, you know, I love Miss Gertrude. She was a doll, man. She'd pull out a box of ties, and customers would come over there. You know how she was. She was the sweetest, the sweetest.
You know, I haven't had a lot of people talk about Gertrude,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd love it if you'd share a little, like, first of all, what was your sense of her when you got here?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, her and Dora was kind of up there in the office kind of stuff, and you know, so it wasn't that. It was Miss Gertrude. She liked me, you know. It took a while before she liked me, but she liked me. And we'd go to lunch in there, and she would give me gefilte fish left over after the holiday. Huh? I told her, I said, how do you all eat this? And she liked me even more out that. She says, well, I'm not, you are. I mean, she didn't want it. She brought over there and gave it to me and James, you know, in the thing. I loved her though, her sense of, and then, you know, with the shoes, she had to get the shoes. Everybody that went to New York had to go up on 22nd Street and get her some of those support shoes that she used to get from up there. And she'd go on the trips up there, go in there and see it, picking out ties. And you know how many she was? It was like, holy mackerel. I'll never forget one time, we had Jerry, I can't remember his last name now, but he was our display director. Taco and Jerry, they'd done this whole big thing in the store and made it look good, purple and paisleys, all kinds of colors in there. And Miss Gertrude comes in and says, oh my God, she says, what is this? This is the most awful looking stuff. It looks like a house of ill repute in here. I got the biggest kick out of that. I mean, she was just an unbelievable person, and I really did like her a lot. Loved her, and she's a sweetie.
Folks have mentioned innovation sometimes when they're talking about, when I've been talking with them, that they feel that the store innovated in different ways. Is that something that you have anything to say about that? Or just leave it open.
I don't know that I ever looked at it that way,
Right.
but I was part of it.
Yeah.
I was part of that.
Did you feel you could take risks? I'm curious.
Not really.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I had boundaries that I knew. I knew what David and Andre wanted, and I really tried hard to do that and to manage the way that would make them happy. It's like anybody does with their job. You know, they want to make the boss happy, but also, you know, they have to be smart about it. You know, you got to make sure that you're not shooting yourself in the foot. You want to do this particular thing, whether it be with people, whether it be with pay, whether it be with any kind of thing, and it backfires, you know, and that's one of the things that has helped me be successful way beyond what I was here. but in my past life, in my newer life, especially in the ownership part of the business, you know, trying to be to keep the balancing act. Right now, you know, I have 3 partners in the business. I mean, you know, just to tell you a little more about Torino Leather if you want.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, so basically I was at Xenia and was there for about 3.5 years, and Daisy and I lived up in Westchester County, and Daisy was a legal secretary for most of her life, and she worked on 53rd Street for a huge attorney, head of litigation for an attorney's office up there. They had 1,000 employees, 1,000 lawyers, and you know, she's, like I say, she's from Ecuador. I mean, she doesn't like cold. And one day we were, you know, we lived up on a hill right outside of Scarsdale, and you know, she was walking up the hill to the house, and it was ice, and she slipped and slid down at about 25, 30 feet. And it came home, and she says, "I can't do this anymore." So I didn't like the cold either. I mean, it gets cold, and you know, they got ice that's in the gutters for months. You know, never melts. So it rained. But I said, "Well, okay." So I'm sitting there reading DNR again in my office on 57th and 5th Avenue, above the store, the Xenia store, and I see an ad in there that Mimlis put in for Torino. He wanted a sales manager, and I said, "Well, hell, that'll get us back over there." So, you know, he was so tight it took months to come out to negotiate the right deal. But we ended up working it out, and we came home. And, you know, that was a really important thing. And I stayed there. That was like in late 1999, and as the sales manager. So I had to build the staff. He had some people that were working there that weren't getting the job done, and I had to go out and find people from my relationships in the business for all that length of time, and did that. And we had some really good business, and the business grew dramatically grew. So then comes Katrina. You know, we had moved. Our factory was out on Michoud Boulevard, out by NASA. Way out there, right in the worst possible place you could be for Katrina. And Mimlis and his wife were on Ireland, and then they went to a North Sea cruise and what have you. And girl that is now my right hand, Carol, and I were in Las Vegas at a trade show at Magic. And the storm hits, and we were able to look on the laptop and see real time what was going on. And I found a shot through NOAA of our air conditioning units at the factory that were about that far underwater. I knew it was done, finished. Long story short, we couldn't even get home. We had to both, I went out to Los Angeles and stayed with friends. She went to Houston and stayed with our friends, our family. And then we both had to fly to Baton Rouge and rent a car and drive back. So that's how it was. And, you know, we couldn't get into the place for a month and a half. It was full of water still. They had to pump the water out. So long story short, the Mimlis decided he was going to basically bag it. He wasn't going to go forward. He was already 66, and he just didn't want to invest the money that was required to buy new equipment and a new facility. So there we sit. You know, it was me and vice president of this and vice president of that. There were 4 of us. Manufacturing, design, front office, and sales. So we decided, okay, we're going to buy you out of whatever we can that's available, that isn't ruined, and we're going to go forward. So we did, and that's how it worked. We worked it out with him and bought the business from him. And we went from Torino Belts Inc. to Torino Leather Company on January 1st, 2006. And we moved across town to where we are now on River Road. Tell me how smart we were. We flood, and then we moved to, the levee is right in front of our factory. But they don't let the levee, we were smart, they don't let the river flood. You know, they opened up Morganza and Bonnie Carey spillways and offloaded water. So anyway, we started
They
with
say
that.
the closer you are to the levee, actually, the higher your ground
Well,
is.
especially in that area, we
That's
learned we were 5 feet below,
Yeah.
and Harahan River Ridge was named River Ridge for that reason. We're 14 feet above sea level there. So you know, our first production came off at April 1st, 2006. We had I can't even explain all of the things because post to Katrina, everything you did took 3 times as long and cost 3 times as much. And you know, here we are, we're trying to start a business really from scratch. And we did though, and we got it, and we were able to, you know, continue and build the business. And you know, we decided that we would like to make most of it here. So today we make about 95% of our products right here on River Road and Old Jefferson they call it. So that's kind of the little story there. So it's all
It's an
good.
incredible story. I
Yeah,
like that story.
you can't even make it up, you know. And it was funny. Our reps, after about 18 months post Katrina, you know, because they call, well, we're having problems here. Still having problems. You know, I could just hear them in their mind thinking, well, when are y'all going to get this thing together again? You know, and production and all this stuff. And anyway, long story short, I said to the partners, it's time for us to have a sales meeting. So they come in. We went in 2 carloads and picked them up at the airport, and we drove them around through Lakeview. You know, where they got the X's on the houses, and 2 and 3 and 4 on those houses, holes in the roof where the people crawled out of. I mean, I'm telling you, by the time an hour was up, they were all depressed.
Abashed.
They were all depressed. So we went straight to Pat O'Brien. Straight to Pat O'Brien's. It was 4 in the afternoon. A buddy of mine's been running it for 45 years. I said, you got to set these guys up. I said, I don't care if they get sloppy drunk, it's all right. We're going to do that. So he did. It was all good. So
And
they
you
understood
distribute
then.
nationally, right?
We do. We have about 750 active accounts around Saks Fifth Avenue, Nordstrom's, Amazon, all of those, Zappos. But then our primary business is to people like Forum Group stores. We sell, you know, Mitchell's is a wonderful customer, Oak Hall's, and all of that group we do good business with, and the stores that are, you know, like Steve Scott in Jackson, Mississippi. They have wonderful stores. Primarily, it's he and his son and a few other people that work in there every day, and you know, nice retail shops. Some have men and women. Some have mostly, you know, are all men. We don't make ladies' things, but we do go, you know, we do that. So those are the kind of stores that we do business. We don't do much international business, but we also have our own website that is direct to the consumer. And a lot of customers, years ago, they were disappointed with that, let's put it that way, meaning retail customers. They didn't want, competing with that. The reality is that we have 170 belt styles, 170. Our best store is probably somebody like Rubenstein's, and it may be 20. If I don't show it, it's the best kept secret in the world, you know? So that's kind of the whole thing. It's just what's happened in the industry. I don't think there's a vendor that's out there that doesn't have their own website anymore.
So let me ask you on those lines. The store is 100 years old this year.
Yeah.
Does it matter that it's 100? And when you look at the next 100 or the next 50 even, what do you think it matters for a retail store? Like, what is the point of a retail store? What is the point of Rubenstein's?
Well, the point is what it's always been, touchy-feely, and relationships. Your best customers, and I can tell you this without, I don't know who they are right now, I don't know, but they like coming here. And that's a key thing. And I think, honestly, I think Kenny is really good at that. Much better than David and Andre at that. And so I think that's very important. He understands the idea of being current and sharing. He does. Not that they don't. I mean, they're great. They're good people. That's not what I mean. I mean, he's got a younger mentality, and that's important. And he's smart. So I'm hopeful. You know, I've got a store right now J.E. Nielsen's in Oxford, Mississippi, right by Ole Miss, right on the square, 182 years old. I have another count that's in south of Chicago, about 30 miles, 212 years old. I mean, these are stores that have innovated. Now, that store that's old, you know, it was old, stodgy guys, you know, went through 4 or 5 generations and stuff. Uh, and now a gay couple that are married have it. They are my best friends in business, and they are awesome merchants. They work together in the store. They are fantastic. And they've really taken that place and taken an area that is a nice area in the suburbs of Chicago that has a great customer base, and they're on fire. I mean, they're totally on fire. So I wonder sometimes, I said, Trey, what are you doing over there, man? I mean, how are you giving that stuff away and using it for marketing? No, we got to do that. So I think that's it, and I think that's really how it happened with Morris and Elkin and with David and Andre. There was that time frame that, you know, we went, you know, there had to be a quantum change, and I'm hoping that same thing's going to happen with Kenny, and it looks to me like it has. And I'm not sure whether Allison's still involved much anymore. You know, I know pretty much what Hilly does, but I'm not sure if David's girls are involved in the management at all. But I know Kenny, and I see him interacting with vendors and with other retailers, and he got the right trajectory. So I think that'll maybe go on for another 30 years, maybe whatever. He gets tired of fooling with it, you know, but don't look like it has if he takes after either one of these other two. I mean, it's like, gosh, they just started working 5 days a week from 6 days a few years ago.
Yeah, that's true, that's true, it's crazy.
Well, listen, they like it. That's
It's true.
good, yeah.
Well, I want to respect your time, so before we go, I just wanted to ask, is there anything that we haven't talked about? Any story you want to be sure and tell? Any person you want to mention? Any idea that has been left out?
No, I think that primarily for me, this was a real honor for me to be able to be asked about my tenure here, because you guys are family to me. Just been that way since the day I walked in the door, and it's that way today. And I hope
Do a
that.
history of the store without you, Tom.
Well, I'm just glad, and I mean, I'm happy for the successes that we found, and my success at this stage of the game, whether it be through Xenia or whether it be in my own business here, is all because of the time I spent here. Really is. Helped me a lot.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Okay.
That's really, really great. I can't appreciate